It's a bit of a perfect storm. There's so many things come together.
Does it cross your mind whether it's viable?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's on your mind all the time?
Yeah, it keeps you awake at night, yeah.
Across Britain, farmers are sounding the alarm.
It literally won't be here in Britain. If it carries on the way it is, it literally won't. Everything will be imported.
Many question their own future.
We have made our own industries so unable to compete that they close down.
Where tackling climate change clashes with where our food comes from.
How is it more environmentally sound to be bringing food from Brazil on a rusty old ship, having already destroyed the Amazon jungle to do it?
And while we're urged to buy British, consumers vote with their wallets.
There's a price to pay to have that luxury of buying British and caring whether you buy British.
This is a story about whether British farming can actually survive. It's 5 in the morning in Bala, Snowdonia.
I try just to get around all the cattle to feed them, just to wait for daylight.
We're here to meet Rodri, a Welsh upland farmer whose family have tended this land for generations.
I'm lucky, I've got a family here, I've got people up here, but, it can be a very lonely time as well when things aren't going too well. So.
It's a tough job in a harsh environment that's getting more difficult.
I think there's a lot of farms and farmers that actually feel now that their livelihood and their living and their farm that generations have worked for are genuinely at a point where is it going to be viable for the future? We've got another generation as young as he is at the moment. Farming is all he wants to do, and the feeling that you might be that generation that loses everything, it's not a good one, really. I'll do.
Rodri's main worry, subsidies. They're 40% of his income.
Ma! Come by!
Brought in after World War II to ensure food security, the world has changed. Post-Brexit, the cash is there for farmers. But to get it, there are environmental conditions. From next year, Rodri will have to dedicate 10% of eligible land on his farm to trees.
If you had to lose some of these immediate fields here to tree cover, what would that mean for the business?
Obviously, you'd either have to keep less stock, which makes you less effective, or it then means buying in a lot more winter fodder, because I wouldn't be able to produce enough hay and silage over the summer to carry me through the winter. So then that means then more off-farm costs and making my carbon footprint worse, because it means buying feeds and carrying it in and hauling it in from other areas. So.
But the whole point in this scheme is to help the environment.
Yeah.
But actually, in reality, on your farm, it could harm it.
It could, yeah.
The Welsh Government is consulting on the plans as farmers protest against them. On the steps of Parliament, 5,500 wellies, each representing a farming job at risk. But the crisis has already begun. In the last 5 years, more than 13,000 farmers have left agriculture in the UK. The number is at its lowest in more than a decade. And it's not just a problem in Wales. We're in Kent, the Garden of England, to meet two very different farmers, both planning to attend a big protest in London.
The UK pork industry has been absolutely decimated in probably the last 10 years, even going back further than that now, but European pork coming in that's heavily subsidised by their own governments has flooded our markets and made pig production in the UK pretty much impossible.
Jeff sells his pork in his own farm shop. He says he can't make enough money through supermarkets.
For me personally, I feel that there's an unfairness in British agriculture in that I think that government, particularly this one actually, has been bad in throwing us under the bus. The Brexit trade deals that have been done are absolutely atrocious. It's just so short-sighted. It's going to be that utter lack of food security and how we're going to feed our own nation.
What's your worst fear for the next 5, 10, 15 years in farming?
My worst fear is when I look at my friends, their children are not interested in going into farming. The next generation aren't coming into farming. The average age of a farmer in this country is already 70. There's not anyone going to come into the industry.
And what will that mean?
More reliance on substandard foreign imports.
While new trade deals, like the one with Australia and New Zealand, are Jeff's concern, a few miles down the road, fruit farmer Tim has different worries.
The family, we've been farming for many generations.
He sells thousands of tons of strawberries to major UK supermarkets.
How many staff are you bringing in sort of harvesting and planting season?
We'll have pretty much at our peak about 2,000 staff.
Before Brexit, foreign workers could stay at Tim's farm as long as they wanted. Now they have to leave after 6 months.
I don't need people coming for 6 months. By the time a person comes from 6 months, they've just got good enough for me to make them an economically viable worker, and then they have to go home. The visa is only for 6 months. They've basically put a hand behind my back and told me to fight someone with a gun. I'm in inability. I just can't fight. I can't negotiate fairly because the prices of the fruit coming in from abroad is not reflective of the same cost prices we have.
Whether it's subsidies, imports, staff or costs, many farmers say they've had enough. The end of March, and at the end of their tether, the tractors roll into Westminster.
It's quite a daunting thing for us all to come up here, to be honest, but we're just doing it because we're getting desperate and we just really need the government to listen now before it's too late, before the farmers start going under.
Of course, a lot of people say, actually, no, farmers, if they want the taxpayers' subsidies, they've got to look after the environment.
I think they're dead right. The only problem is, what are you going to eat? Berries? Bark? Because the logic is, we're already as Europe grubbing the Amazon to bring food into Europe, we're then going to take 10% of our own thing out of production. How is it more environmentally sound to be bringing food from Brazil on a rusty old ship, having already destroyed the Amazon jungle to do it?
British farmers are usually far more cautious about coming out onto the streets and protesting compared to their European neighbours, but the frustration, the anger, the fact that so many of them are at risk of going bust has now become too much.
Farmers believe government policy is pushing them out of business. But as well as decisions in Westminster, this is as much about where our food comes from and whether we, the public, really mind. About 54% of the food we eat comes from the UK. A third is imported from the EU, the rest shipped in from around the world. Whether it's chicken breast from Brazil or pork chops from Holland, it's here because it can often be cheaper than British. Farmers don't like it, but at the end of the day, it comes down to money.
Right, sit here, take those shoes off, please. Oh, you're getting heavy. My big boy.
With the kids back from school, it's time to start dinner in the Ranford household.
So I'm doing mashed potato, sausages and mash and peas for Russell with gravy, and I'm going to do it with French fries for Andrew.
What's it say on the back then?
So, 42% pork, made using British and EU pork, filled into non-UK beef casings.
If you can get the food that the kids like,
Yeah.
do you care?
On an academic level, I care, but that care's all the way over here. On a day-to-day basis, I care about being able to afford to feed my children, and that's my priority. And there you go. I'd like to, sit here and worry about the farmers. I do care in the abstract, but on a day-to-day basis, probably most normal people are in a position to make that a priority.
With cheaper food on offer, buying British may well be becoming a luxury choice for the wealthy.
Come on.
Despite the challenges, there is a new generation of farmers coming in.
I've got 2 older brothers. Neither of them are interested in doing it.
25-year-old Josie has just taken over the family's dairy in Wiltshire.
You've got to be some sort of person, I think.
You've got to want to do this, right?
Oh, you have to love it, honestly. If you didn't love it, why would you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning in Baltic conditions where you don't get paid very much, and you might lose some animals to TB, or one might break its leg, and just pick yourself up and carry on?
Josie's modernising the farm, bringing in new technology.
This is my computer. I love my computer.
This makes it easy for you.
It makes it so much easier. So I've got everything on here. So this is their daily milk production for yesterday. I can see what they did this morning, what they're currently doing this afternoon, the last 7 days, how long milking's taken, which is quite nice. And then click on here on uniform, and that's all of my information about my cows.
Do you think you'll be doing this in 20 years?
Yeah, I do. But I don't know how many more people there will be doing it. Because I'm quite lucky that I want to do it and I want to carry it on, but there's a lot of farmers in our area that have children that don't necessarily want to do it, and I don't blame them, because it's hard work mentally and physically to carry on farming.
While she worries about the price of milk, Josie is optimistic about the future.
I feel hopeful because something has to change somewhere, and if you aren't hopeful, there's no point doing this industry, because you just get mentally blown apart. And you've got to keep hope, because one day it's going to be okay and you will get hopefully paid enough, but the good times outweigh the bad times, I always say.
Right, come in, we'll have a pannet, or whatever you call it.
Back in Bala, and the future of the farm is on the table for Rodri.
This has been the first time I've actually had sleepless nights thinking, am I going to be still here in a few years? And that's not an easy thing to think about when you've been part of this for 4 or 5 generations, to think that you might be the one that fails.
Do you feel that could happen? Or is a risk?
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. It's never crossed my mind before, but yeah, it's a reality at the moment, yeah.